So today we're going to talk about biochar, this lovely black stuff here. What is it? Well, biochar is mineralized carbon. A lot of people are used to maybe taking carbon capsules when they're feeling sick or when they have parasites. That's because carbon in this form is extraordinarily absorptive. So this as a soil amendment is absolutely fantastic. This hugely increases the carrying capacity of our soil, its ability to hold on to water and nutrients. And it also, because of the huge surface area that this has, it gives great breeding ground to microbes, which, as we're learning about in this course, composting, a huge part of the reason we compost is to breed microbes and to bring our soil back to life. Well, breeding them in our compost pile is great, but then when we mix them with this stuff, we give them massive habitat in which to reproduce, and they will actually colonize this stuff. And unlike adding just compost to our soil, when we add biochar to our soil, we're adding something that will never leave. This is how we really get into building black, deep, rich soils. And so we add this to our soils in trace amounts. But how is it made? Well, biochar is made through a process called pyrolysis. Lysis just means breaking something down, and pyro means fire. So breaking something down using fire without oxygen. That's what the word means. So how do we do this? Well, we want to burn an organic material, and it can be just about anything. Typically, what we use here on the farm is old coffee shells. This is one of the byproducts from one of the processes here on our farm. But you can use it, you can make biochar out of anything. Lots of people use sawdust. You could use dried leaves, twigs. You can even use bigger chunks of wood. The key to realize is that we need to find a way of burning our starting material without oxygen. So something like this is great. This is a metal drum that has an exhaust on it. So you can make a metal drum like this, and what we do here is we have this metal drum, reinforced 5mm steel, and it has a lid that goes over the top of it. So our target material goes in there. And so what we'll do here is we take our target material. Could be wood chips, could be dried leaves, could be corn husks, could be just about anything. And we like to really pack this stuff in. So I like to push this stuff down, compact it as much as possible, and fill it just up to the level of this chimney. So we want this chimney to stay open, to stay clear. Yeah, so now we're ready to go. Now we've got our starting material packed into the drum. I'll push it down one more time. This is just so we can get the most out of our burn. Okay, there we go. Now we're almost ready to make some biochar. We put our lid on. And now we're ready. So now what do? Well, we just want to light a fire around this guy. And what's going to happen when we light the fire is we're going to get these gases come off. And the gases are really just all of the other elements, the silica, the nitrogen, everything else that's contained in the structure of this organic material. It'll be mostly carbon, because all organic material is made of carbon, but all of the other elements are going to burn off. And now, the great thing about this, if you do it right, is realizing that these gases are also flammable. So You can make one of these and you can build a regular fire pit around it, and you can lay a grill over the top of it. But what we do is we like to burn this stuff in our sauna. So now we've got our starter material all locked up, and we've got it in such a way that gases can escape. So the other elements contained in this starting material can escape, but the carbon will be trapped. Yeah, because no air can get into this drum. That's the key thing to realize. Now, there's a bunch of different ways of doing this. We can literally just sit this drum in an open fire pit and we can burn it. We can sit a drum like this inside a bigger drum and we can light a fire around it like that. All you really need to understand is that the material in here is getting subjected to extremely high temperatures, but is charring without the presence of oxygen. So it's breaking down without the presence of oxygen. But in my travels to different permaculture sites, I saw all kinds of ways of making this stuff. And the one thing that always really bothered me was that there was never a second use for the heat. So as a permaculturalist, I always want a stack function. I don't want to just light a fire to get biochar. And so me and Jeremy and the rest of the guys at the farm and the rest of the team at the farm here, we started to go over this a lot in our heads. How can we make biochar in a way that we're getting at least one more use for the heat? So we designed this biochar sauna. And the biochar sauna it's almost exactly what we described. We've got a drum that goes around this that has a good airflow on it. So the drum that goes around this actually sits into our cob sauna. The heat from that fire gets used to heat the sauna. This has another great feature in that the gases that come off this can be noxious, and you really need to take care with that. But when we do it in this way, those gases burn a second time in the chamber, so we get this superheating effect from the potentially toxic gases burning a second time in our sauna. So let me show you how that works. Okay, so what we have here is really exactly what I described earlier on. We have a drum here where we're going to light our fire, and this is going to have a good draw on it. We crack this door and we've got this space here where oxygen can enter, and we've got a nice draw out through our chimney. So that's the key to having a regular fire, is to having a good draw of air where the cold air comes in the bottom and the hot air goes out the top. Most people who have a fireplace in their houses will understand what I mean. But so the stuff that we light out here, yeah, that's going to escape. The heat will get kept. This is the key to this design. We don't want to just burn stuff for one reason. We want to trap as much of the heat as we can inside our cob sauna. So that's why we built this sauna made out of thick cob, about 60 centimeters thick walls. Big thermal mass, really good insulator. And so this drum sits in here, and so almost the entire drum is located inside the sauna, including the chimney. So the chimney, even though it's taking that hot air up and out of the chimney and some of that carbon with it, it's radiating heat out into the sauna. So let me show you how this works. We put our chimney going back into the back of the fire, and what that does is it means these gases, and we put the chimney facing down, these gases, when they come out of here, that encourages them to burn and circulate through the chimney, thereby adding energy to that fire, and by getting burned a second time, it takes the toxicity out of those gases as well. So we slide this back in here. I just have some regular old bricks here on the floor of the sauna. You can build a grate for it if you want, but anything just to get it up off the ground a little bit. And we slide this into the back of the chimney like that. And then we just want to make a fire. We get our kindling. This bamboo grass is great for that. Offcuts of building materials. All right, now that we got all our stuff in here, it's time to light it. Not any different to lighting a regular old fire. I like these dried leaves as kindling. A little bit of cardboard. Sometimes, because we made this drum so big, it can be helpful to leave the door open on this for a while just to get things moving. But then once this thing really heats up and the gases start coming off it, you'll see that the fire actually speeds up. And then we can keep this fire going for as long as we want. Just keep filling in the spaces around here, depending on how long you want to enjoy your temazcal for. It usually takes us about an hour and a half of burning until everything in our drum has charred down to biochar. But really, with something like this, the key point to understand is the way it works. We need this regular fire out around here. We need a good draw on that, so we need plenty of available oxygen. And then on this inner drum in here, we want it sealed, but with an escape for the gases. And then this could be anything. We could build a sauna around this. We could have a stove top on this. You know, you name it, let your imagination run wild. How can we use this extra heat around here? Maybe we could build another compartment up above here and bake bread or make pizzas. The sky's the limit really once you understand this permaculture principle of stack function. When we do our burn in a controlled oxygen-free environment like this, what we get is biochar. Black gold, some people call it. And yeah, if you feel this stuff, it feels amazing. One really important thing to realize about biochar is that we don't want to add this to our garden just like this. This stuff is hungry. And by that I mean it wants to be charged. It has a huge capacity to store water and to store nitrogen and other trace elements. But if we add it to our garden just like this, it will actually outcompete our plants for water and nitrogen and other trace elements while it's charging itself. So we don't want to do that. We want to supercharge it first. And so how do we do that? Well, we want to add a lot of nitrogen to it, and we want to add a lot of other materials to it. So what we like to do on the farm is we like to take our finished compost and we like to mix the two together. And so I like to do something around a 2-to-1 ratio. 2 parts compost to 1 part biochar. So we take our bag of compost here, we put it in on top of it, and we mix it all up. And really what we're doing now, what we want to happen now is all of the microbes, all the beneficial microbes that broke our compost down are going to slowly spread out and colonize this biochar. Remember, microbes are microscopic, as are the pores on our biochar. And so what will happen is that those pores, that huge surface area contained in the biochar, will become populated by our microbes, by our beneficial microbes that are contained in our compost. And so we're really providing them with a city, with it's like a housing plan for our microbes, is the first thing that the biochar is doing. So you just really want to mix this up with your hands and wet it down a little bit and leave it to sit for about a week or so. And then you've really got a product that's, as far as soil amendment goes, just about the best there is. Yeah. Okay. So that's what it is and why we want to use it. And what will happen is all this nice compost stuff will slowly get consumed by our plants, but the biochar itself will stay in our garden. And then every time we add more compost to it, or compost tea, or liquid feed, or even just plain old water, it will store that stuff up and act as like a slow release. It will slow down the rate at which that stuff dissipates out of our soil, and it will let our plants take what they need from it little by little. So we're supercharging our soil, and everybody knows that what we want is black soils, deep black carbon rich soils, and there's just no better way of doing it than with biochar, in my opinion. And the other thing to realize is that This is a great way. Everyone knows about fighting climate change and wanting to store carbon now. This is a great way of creating a carbon sink. This is a way that we can farm where we're actually not, we're becoming carbon negative. We're storing more carbon in our soils than we're releasing, which with compost we do that anyway, but this is just like elevating the process to a whole new level. Okay, so if we look what's happening here, I'm on my third watering can. And I keep wetting this stuff, but then when I mix in below it, it's still dry. So that shows us something. That shows how much water this small amount of organic matter mixed with biochar actually needs to get fully charged. And well, we should think about that then, the implications for our garden. What's it doing? First and foremost, it's massively increasing the amount of water that our garden needs to hold on to. So when it rains or when we turn our sprinklers on, all of that water is just going to get captured and held in this stuff. And well, that means when we have too much water, when it rains too much, instead of, you know, our plants getting soaked and feeling like they're drowning, this stuff is just going to hold on to that water and release it later. And it also means when there's too little water, well, this stuff from when there was too much earlier on, this stuff will have held on to it and will slowly release it. So it's helping us deal with floods and droughts effectively. And now on our halfway through our third watering can, we're finally getting to the point where it feels saturated. And this is how we want to leave it, because this is an ideal environment now for microbes, for those microbes that already had broken down our compost, all our animal manures and kitchen scraps. Those microbes, they're having a great time. They're loving living in the compost, but they're ready to start multiplying. And this biochar, it's like good urban planning for our microbes. Now they can spread out, start to have bigger families, start to think about the future, sending the kids to college. All of that becomes possible when we've got the biochar here. So, you know, we want to think about our microbes and think about their well-being, and they're just going to love populating all these little microscopic pores here, making their homes, planning for their kids' futures, all of those things that microbes love to do. Now that everything in our bucket is nicely wet, you know, I like it. I think a good test for both compost and inoculated biochar is where we can ring it and we see some drops coming off it, but it's not totally saturated. And that's pretty good. And we don't have to stop there. We can keep charging this. Anything we put in here is going to get held on to. So you can put this bucket outside your house. You can go pee in it at night. You can, if you've got some leftover compost tea that you made and you're not sure what to do with it, dump it in here. It'll all just get held on to by this amazing mix now of microbe-rich compost and biochar. It'll not only get held onto, but all the good stuff will multiply out. And so when we add this to our garden, we're not just adding great material for the texture of our garden and great nutrients for our plants, we're adding a whole community of living microorganisms which are going to go and hopefully thrive in our garden for years. Now we've got our inoculated biochar, and this stuff has been sitting here for a long time. This, I really like to apply it as a mulch or a fertilizer. So we don't need huge amounts of this, but here we got our spinach starts here, and we can just start spreading this around, and it's going to cover the ground, and it's going to drip feed our little spinach starts here with all the goodness they need to grow up strong. And it's also, because it's just pure organic matter, it's not really a good space for seeds to germinate in, so it's going to help keep weeds down as well. It's really something you want to apply bit by bit over the years. But you can work this stuff in. I like to work it in when we're renovating beds, but also add it as a living mulch to the surface.